The morning sun cast long shadows across Westbrook High's polished hallways as Victoria Bennett made her entrance. Her designer heels clicked against the floor, each step announcing her presence like a queen surveying her kingdom. At 17, Victoria had mastered the art of making others feel small without saying a word. A slight raise of her perfectly shaped eyebrow, a dismissive glance, or a whispered comment to her ever-present group of followers. That Monday morning started like any other, with students parting like the Red Sea as Victoria walked through the main entrance. Her long blonde hair was freshly styled, her makeup flawless, and her outfit worth more than most families spent on groceries in a month. The daughter of Richard Bennett, one of the city's most prominent real estate developers, Victoria wore her wealth like armor. "Did you see what Jessica was wearing today?" Victoria's voice carried across the hallway as she stopped at her locker. "It looks like she raided a thrift store dumpster." Her friends laughed on cue, their voices echoing off the metal lockers. But Victoria's perfectly orchestrated morning was about to face an unexpected disruption. As she turned toward her first class, she noticed an unfamiliar face at the administration office, a girl she had never seen before. Maya Johnson stood quietly beside the secretary's desk, holding her schedule and a small stack of books. Unlike Victoria's designer outfit, Maya wore simple jeans and a clean white button-down shirt. Her natural hair was styled in neat braids, and despite being in an unfamiliar environment, she carried herself with quiet confidence. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," Mrs. Rodriguez announced as Maya entered the advanced placement chemistry class. "This is Maya Johnson, who's transferred to us from Hamilton Academy on a full academic scholarship." Victoria's eyes narrowed at the word scholarship. She watched as Maya took the only empty seat, right in front of her. The new girl's presence somehow felt like a challenge, though Maya hadn't said or done anything to warrant such feelings. During the class, Maya answered every question correctly, her clear voice carrying across the room with confidence. Victoria noticed how Mr. Rodriguez's eyes lit up with each perfect response, how other students began to look at Maya with admiration rather than the usual caution reserved for new students. "She thinks she's so smart," Victoria whispered to Ashley, her closest friend. "Someone needs to teach her how things work around here." At lunch, Maya sat alone, spreading her books across the table as she ate and studied simultaneously. Victoria watched from her premium spot in the cafeteria, the corner table everyone knew belonged to her group. "Look at her," Victoria said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Acting like she belongs here. Probably got that scholarship because of her color, not because she deserved it." The words hung in the air like poison, but Maya seemed oblivious to them, absorbed in her studies. This only irritated Victoria more. New students were supposed to be nervous, supposed to seek approval, supposed to understand their place in the hierarchy. As the day progressed, Victoria's irritation grew. In every shared class, Maya showed not just intelligence, but a kind of self-assurance that Victoria had only achieved through years of making others feel inferior. Even worse, teachers praised Maya's insights, and some students actually smiled at her in the hallways. "This won't do," Victoria thought as she watched Maya pack up her books at the end of the day. "This won't do at all." That evening, in her family's massive mansion, Victoria sat at her designer desk, scrolling through social media. She had already found Maya's profiles, disappointingly clean and proper. No embarrassing photos, no controversial posts, nothing she could use. Yet. "Victoria, dinner's ready," her mother called from downstairs. "Coming," Victoria replied, but her mind was already plotting. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, Maya Johnson would learn what happened to people who didn't know their place at Westbrook High. Little did Victoria know, her perfectly controlled world was about to face its own challenges. As she descended the grand staircase for dinner, she didn't notice her father's tense phone conversation in his study, or the way her mother's hands shook slightly as she arranged the silverware. The first cracks in the Bennett family's perfect facade were beginning to show, even as Victoria planned her campaign against the new student who dared to shine too brightly in her kingdom. The next morning, Victoria arrived at school early, gathering her loyal followers near Maya's locker. Her plan was simple but effective: make Maya's life so uncomfortable that she want to leave Westbrook High on her own. "Remember," Victoria instructed her group, "we don't touch her. We don't need to get our hands dirty." Her smile was cold as she watched Maya approach the locker, carrying a science project she'd clearly worked hard on. As Maya reached for her locker, Ashley accidentally bumped into her, sending the project crashing to the floor. The carefully constructed model shattered, pieces scattering across the hallway as students walked past, some stepping on the fragments. "Oops," Ashley said with fake concern. "You should really watch where you're going." Maya stood still for a moment, looking at her ruined work. Then, without a word, she began collecting the pieces. Victoria waited for tears, for anger, for any sign of weakness. Instead, Maya's face remained calm as she gathered what she could salvage. During lunch, Victoria's campaign continued. When Maya sat down with her tray, she found her usual spot covered in spilled milk. As she moved to another table, whispers followed her, carefully crafted rumors Victoria had spent the morning spreading. "I heard she got kicked out of her last school. Someone said she cheated on her scholarship test. Did you know her family's on welfare?" But Maya's response wasn't what Victoria expected. Instead of hiding, Maya walked confidently to an empty table, pulled out her books, and began studying. A few minutes later, 2 students from the science club joined her, genuinely interested in discussing the upcoming science fair. Victoria watched, her frustration growing. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Can't make your dance recital tonight. Important business meeting." She deleted it without replying, her anger finding a new target in Maya. In chemistry class, Victoria saw her chance. As Maya mixed chemicals for their lab experiment, Victoria accidentally bumped her arm. The solution should have spilled all over Maya's white shirt. Except Maya's reflexes were quick. She steadied the beaker, preventing any spillage. "Nice save," Mr. Rodriguez commented. "That could have been dangerous. Everyone, please be more careful with the equipment." Victoria's face burned as several students glanced her way. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. After school, Victoria overheard Maya talking to their English teacher about a poetry competition. Maya's entry had made it to the finals, representing Westbrook High, something the school hadn't achieved in years. "We're very proud to have you represent us," the teacher said warmly. "Your poem about resilience and identity is exactly what the judges are looking for." That evening, Victoria sat in her enormous bedroom, scrolling through social media. Her followers had posted the usual mean comments about Maya, but something felt different. Some students were actually defending the new girl, impressed by her grace under pressure. Victoria threw her phone aside, walking to her window. The mansion's grounds stretched out below, perfectly manicured but somehow empty. Her mother was at another charity event, her father still working. The house echoed with silence. A notification popped up on her laptop, a news alert about her father's company. She quickly closed it, not wanting to see another article about potential investigations and financial irregularities. The pit in her stomach grew deeper. The next day, Victoria escalated her attacks. During gym class, Maya's clothes mysteriously disappeared from her locker. Victoria had arranged for them to be hidden, expecting Maya to miss class or cry to the teacher. Instead, Maya borrowed spare clothes from the gym teacher and participated anyway, even scoring the winning point in volleyball. Some students actually cheered for her. "What is wrong with everyone?" Victoria hissed to Ashley. "Don't they know who runs this school?" But looking around the gym, Victoria saw something that scared her more than any failed attempt to humiliate Maya. She saw students watching Maya with admiration, not fear. She saw genuine smiles, not the forced ones her presence usually commanded. As the day ended, Victoria stood by her car, watching Maya walk home. Despite everything thrown at her, Maya's head was held high, her steps confident. For the first time, Victoria felt something she didn't expect: doubt. Not about Maya, but about herself. Little did she know, tomorrow would bring changes that would shake her world to its core, and Maya would play a very different role than she expected. The morning started with chaos at the Bennett mansion. Victoria woke to the sound of raised voices downstairs, something unusual in her perfectly controlled home. Creeping to the top of the stairs, she overheard fragments of her parents' conversation. The FBI investigation, assets frozen, school payments. Her father's voice sounded strained, desperate even. Victoria's heart pounded as she processed the words. This couldn't be happening to her family. At school, Victoria tried to maintain her usual commanding presence, but her hands trembled as she checked her phone repeatedly for news updates. Headlines screamed about Richard Bennett's company being under federal investigation for fraud. Her family's name, once a symbol of power, was becoming synonymous with scandal. Maya walked into first period, unaware of the storm brewing in Victoria's life. Today, she wore a simple blue dress, carrying herself with the same quiet dignity that had begun to earn her respect from students and teachers alike. Victoria's usual group of followers seemed different today. They whispered among themselves, glancing at their phones, then at her. News traveled fast in high school, and the story about her father was spreading like wildfire. During lunch, Victoria sat alone for the first time in years. Her so-called friends had suddenly discovered other places to be. The irony wasn't lost on her. She now occupied the isolated corner table where she had once forced others to sit. From her new vantage point, she watched Maya. The girl she had tried so hard to break was surrounded by students, helping them with chemistry problems. Even some of Victoria's former friends had drifted to Maya's table, drawn by her genuine warmth and intelligence. "Did you hear about her dad?" The whispers reached Victoria's ears. "They say he stole millions. No wonder she could afford those designer clothes. Guess she's not so special anymore." Victoria felt sick. She rushed to the bathroom, barely making it into a stall before the tears came. As she sat there, trying to muffle her sobs, the bathroom door opened. "Are you okay in there?" It was Maya's voice, soft and concerned. Victoria froze. Of all people, why did it have to be Maya who found her like this? "Go away," Victoria managed to say, but her voice cracked. Instead of leaving, Maya spoke again. "I know what it's like when people judge you for things you can't control, when they think they know your whole story from one small piece." Victoria listened, surprised by the lack of satisfaction or mockery in Maya's voice. "My dad died when I was 10, Maya continued. "People treated me differently after that, like I was either someone to pity or someone who didn't belong in their world. But he taught me something important before he died. He said our character isn't built in easy times, it's revealed in hard ones." Victoria slowly opened the stall door, her makeup streaked with tears. She expected to see triumph in Maya's eyes, but found only understanding. "Why are you being nice to me?" Victoria asked. "I've been horrible to you." Maya leaned against the sink, considering her answer. "Because someone needs to break the cycle. And because I saw something in you from the first day, you're not just the mean rich girl. You're someone who's scared of losing control." Victoria slid down to sit on the bathroom floor, not caring about her expensive dress anymore. "Everything's falling apart. My friends, my family's reputation, our money. I don't know who I am without all that." Maya sat down beside her, smoothing her blue dress. "Maybe this is your chance to find out." They sat in silence for a moment, the bathroom's fluorescent lights humming above them. Victoria thought about all the times she tried to hurt Maya, and how Maya was now the only person showing her kindness. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. "For everything I did to you." "I know," Maya replied simply. "What matters is what you do next." The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Maya stood up, offering her hand to Victoria. After a moment's hesitation, Victoria took it, letting Maya help her to her feet. As they left the bathroom together, Victoria felt something shift inside her. Her perfect world had crumbled, but maybe, just maybe, she could build something more real from the ruins. And perhaps her greatest lesson would come from the very person she had tried so hard to destroy. The next day brought the annual Science and Innovation Fair, Westbrook High's most prestigious academic event. Corporate sponsors and college recruiters filled the gymnasium, their presence adding to the nervous energy in the air. Victoria entered the school wearing clothes that felt strange against her skin, simple jeans and a sweater from the back of her closet, now that her credit cards had been frozen. Her usual morning routine of being driven to school in the family's luxury car had been replaced by a quiet bus ride. Maya was already at her display booth, arranging her presentation materials. Her project, titled Bridge the Gap, Digital Education Access for All, stood out among the typical volcanoes and plant experiments. Victoria noticed Maya's hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her display board, the first sign of nervousness she'd ever seen from her. "Nervous?" Victoria asked, approaching Maya's booth. After their bathroom conversation, something had changed between them. A little, Maya admitted. This project means everything. The scholarship committee is watching, and if I win, it could help fund the app's development. Victoria looked at Maya's presentation. The app she designed would help underprivileged students access educational resources, tutoring, and mentorship programs. It was exactly the kind of thing Victoria would have mocked a week ago. As Maya began her final preparations, Whitney Chen, Victoria's former second-in-command, approached the booth with a cup of coffee in hand. Victoria saw the deliberate way Whitney moved, recognized the malicious intent in her eyes. It was the same look Victoria had worn so many times before. Without thinking, Victoria stepped forward, accidentally bumping Whitney's arm. The coffee spilled down Whitney's dress instead of onto Maya's project. "What is wrong with you?" Whitney shrieked, drawing attention from nearby booths. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, a tone she had perfected over years of social manipulation. "You should really watch where you're going with hot drinks near all these important projects." Maya had turned around just in time to witness the exchange. Her eyes met Victoria's, understanding passing between them. The judging began soon after. Maya presented her project with passion and clarity, explaining how her app could bridge the digital divide in education. Victoria watched from the sidelines, seeing Maya in a new light. This wasn't just a smart girl showing off. This was someone trying to make a real difference. During Maya's presentation, Victoria noticed something disturbing. Whitney and some other former friends were huddled near the electrical panel, giggling. Victoria recognized the signs of an impending sabotage attempt. As Maya reached the crucial part of her demonstration, the lights in her section suddenly went out, but Victoria was ready. She had quietly borrowed a battery-powered spotlight from the drama department, anticipating something like this. She quickly switched it on, illuminating Maya's booth. "Thanks," Maya whispered as she continued without missing a beat. The judges were impressed not just by the project, but by Maya's composure under pressure. When she finished, their applause was genuine and enthusiastic. After the presentations, while everyone waited for the results, Victoria overheard Whitney and her group planning one final attempt to humiliate Maya during the award ceremony. Time to choose sides, Victoria thought. She walked straight to the faculty supervisors and reported the planned disruption, something she had never done before. When the winners were announced, Maya's name was called for first place. As she walked to the stage, Whitney and her group stood up, prepared to create a scene. But they found themselves suddenly surrounded by teachers, their plan thwarted. Maya accepted her award with grace, but it was her acceptance speech that changed everything. "This project isn't just about technology," she said. "It's about breaking down barriers. Sometimes those barriers are digital, sometimes social, sometimes ones we create ourselves. But with understanding and compassion, any barrier can be overcome." Her eyes found Victoria in the crowd, and she smiled. "I'd like to thank someone who taught me that people can surprise you, that change is possible, and that it's never too late to choose a different path." Victoria felt tears forming in her eyes as she applauded with the rest of the audience. For the first time in her life, she was clapping for someone else's success, and it felt better than any victory she'd ever had. The science fair marked a turning point at Westbrook High, but the biggest changes were still to come. The weeks following the science fair brought dramatic changes to both Victoria's and Maya's lives. News of Richard Bennett's arrest dominated local headlines, and Victoria found herself facing a reality she never imagined possible. One morning, Victoria arrived at school to find moving trucks outside her mansion. Her mother had told her they needed to downsize to a small apartment while the legal issues were sorted out. Now, wearing the same outfit for the third time that week, Victoria sat alone in the school library during lunch, trying to avoid the stares and whispers. Maya noticed Victoria hiding behind a bookshelf, pretending to read. Despite their recent understanding, they hadn't really talked since the science fair. Maya hesitated, then made a decision. "My mom always says that sandwich shops make everyone equal," Maya said, sliding into the chair across from Victoria. She placed a wrapped sandwich on the table. "I noticed you haven't been eating lunch lately." Victoria stared at the sandwich, pride warring with hunger. "I don't need your pity," she managed to say, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. "It's not pity," Maya replied. "It's what friends do." "Friends?" Victoria looked up, surprised. "After everything I did?" Maya unwrapped her own sandwich. You know, when my dad died, we lost everything too. The medical bills took our house, our savings, everything. But people helped us, not out of pity, but because they saw us as human beings worth helping. Victoria slowly unwrapped the sandwich, taking a small bite. She couldn't remember the last time someone had shared food with her without expecting something in return. The worst part isn't losing the money, Victoria confessed. It's realizing that none of it was real. The way people treated us treated me. It was all because of something that was built on lies. That's not entirely true, Maya said thoughtfully. The money might have been built on lies, but how people treated you was built on your actions. You chose to use your position to make others feel small. Victoria winced at the truth in Maya's words. I did. I was horrible to everyone, especially you. I still don't understand why you're being nice to me. Because, Maya smiled. Someone once showed me that when you're at your lowest point, that's when you learn who you really are. And I think you're just starting to discover who Victoria really is, without all the designer labels and family name. The conversation was interrupted by Whitney and her group walking past, making loud comments about charity cases and fallen queens. Victoria felt her face burn with shame. They're scared, Maya observed after they left. You know why? Because if someone like you can fall from the top, it means their position isn't secure either. Victoria thought about this. I used to be scared of the same thing. That's why I worked so hard to keep everyone else down. And now? Maya asked. Now? Victoria looked around the library, seeing it with new eyes. Now I'm terrified, but not of losing status. I'm scared because I don't know who I am without all that. Maya pulled out her laptop, opening her award-winning app project. Well, I could use some help with this. The grant money from the science fair is helping develop it, but I need someone who understands social dynamics to help make it more user-friendly. Victoria leaned forward, interested despite herself. What do you mean? You spent years figuring out how to make people feel certain ways, right? Those same skills could be used to make people feel included, to make learning feel less intimidating. For the first time in weeks, Victoria felt a spark of purpose. I could help with that. If you want to, Maya said, it's your choice. Everything is your choice now. As they spent the rest of lunch period discussing ideas for the app, Victoria realized something profound. She had spent years building walls to protect her position at the top, only to find real connection when those walls came crumbling down. Outside the library windows, spring sunshine filtered through the trees, casting shifting patterns on their table. Two girls who had started as enemies were now sharing lunch and ideas, proving that sometimes the most meaningful changes come from the most unexpected places. The real test of their newfound friendship, however, was yet to come. A month had passed since Victoria and Maya began working together on the educational app. Victoria now lived in a small two-bedroom apartment with her mother, who had started working as a real estate agent to make ends meet. The transition hadn't been easy, but something unexpected was happening. Victoria was discovering parts of herself she never knew existed. One Monday morning, Victoria arrived at school wearing thrift store clothes Maya had helped her pick out. Instead of feeling ashamed, she felt strangely comfortable. The weight of maintaining a perfect image had lifted from her shoulders. Did you finish the user interface design? Maya asked as they met at their usual lunch table, which had become their unofficial workspace. Almost, Victoria replied, pulling out her laptop, one of the few expensive items she had left. I was thinking about what you said about making it less intimidating for first-time users. Their conversation was interrupted by Whitney, who stopped at their table with a malicious smile. Well, if it isn't the charity case and her pet project. Before Victoria could respond, Maya spoke up. Actually, we're working on something that just got approved for district-wide implementation. Want to see? Whitney's smile faltered. She hadn't expected confidence. She had expected shame. Looking confused, she walked away. That was amazing, Victoria said. But is it true? About the district approval? Maya's face broke into a huge grin. I got the email this morning. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you. Your redesign of the interface made all the difference in the presentation. For the first time in weeks, Victoria felt tears forming, but these were different from the ones she'd cried over lost status and money. These tears came from accomplishment, from creating something that would actually help people. Later that day, During history class, the principal made an unexpected announcement over the intercom. Maya's app project had been selected for a National Education Innovation Competition in Washington, D.C. The whole class turned to look at Maya, but she was looking at Victoria, silently acknowledging their shared achievement. After school, Victoria found herself walking home instead of taking the bus. The route took her past her old mansion, now empty and bearing a seized by federal authorities sign. She stopped to look at it, remembering the girl who once lived there, the girl who thought power came from making others feel small. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya, "Emergency meeting. Come to the library ASAP." When Victoria arrived at the public library, she found Maya surrounded by papers and looking worried. "What's wrong?" Victoria asked. "The competition requires a public presentation," Maya explained, "in front of hundreds of people, including education officials and tech companies. I've never spoken to such a large audience." Victoria sat down, remembering all the social events she'd managed, all the times she commanded attention. "You know, being the queen bee taught me one thing: how to work a room. Let me help you prepare." Over the next few hours, they worked on Maya's presentation skills. Victoria taught her the tricks she'd learned from years of social manipulation, but this time using them for something positive. They practiced body language, voice projection, and how to connect with an audience. "You're a natural leader," Maya observed during a break. "You just needed the right cause." Victoria thought about this. "I spent so long leading people through fear. I never knew you could lead by actually helping them." As they packed up to leave, Maya handed Victoria an envelope. Inside was an official invitation to be her co-presenter at the competition. "I can't take credit for your work," Victoria protested. "It's not my work anymore," Maya replied. "It's ours. You transformed it from a good idea into something that could really work in the real world. We did this together." Walking home in the evening light, Victoria realized that losing everything had actually given her something invaluable: the chance to rebuild herself into someone she could be proud of. The competition would be their biggest challenge yet, but for the first time in her life, she was excited about working hard for something that mattered. What neither girl knew was that their presentation would soon catch the attention of someone who would change both their lives forever. The day of the National Education Innovation Competition arrived with nervous energy and high stakes. Victoria and Maya sat in the auditorium of the Washington Convention Center, watching other teams present their projects. The audience was filled with education officials, tech company executives, and journalists. "Look at the third row," Maya whispered, nudging Victoria. "That's Sarah Chen, CEO of EduTech Solutions. They're the biggest educational technology company in the country." Victoria squeezed Maya's hand reassuringly. Over the past weeks, they had practiced their presentation countless times. Even Whitney and her former friends had helped, acting as a practice audience and offering surprisingly constructive feedback. Next up, the announcer called, from Westbrook High School, Maya Johnson and Victoria Bennett presenting Bridge the Gap: Digital Education Access for All. As they walked to the stage, Victoria remembered a very different kind of walk, her old strut through school hallways, designed to intimidate. Now she walked with purpose rather than pride. Maya began their presentation confidently, just as they had practiced. When she faltered slightly during the technical explanation, Victoria smoothly stepped in, demonstrating their app's user interface on the large screen behind them. "This isn't just about technology," Victoria said, looking directly at the audience. "I used to think being at the top meant pushing others down, but Maya showed me that real success comes from lifting people up. This app isn't about charity, it's about giving everyone a fair chance to shine." During the Q&A session, Sarah Chen raised her hand. "Your partnership is intriguing," she said. "How did two students from such different backgrounds come together on this project?" Maya and Victoria exchanged glances. This was the moment they had discussed, whether to be honest about their history. Victoria stepped forward. "The truth is, I was a bully," she said, her voice clear. "I tried to make Maya's life miserable because I felt threatened by her success. But when my family lost everything, Maya showed me kindness I didn't deserve. This app was her idea, but working on it together taught us both that backgrounds don't define futures." A hushed silence fell over the auditorium. Then, surprisingly, applause broke out. Sarah Chen was nodding, a thoughtful expression on her face. After the presentations, while they waited for the results, Sarah Chen approached their booth. "Your honesty was refreshing," she said. "We see plenty of perfect presentations, but rarely do we see real transformation. I'd like to offer both of you summer internships at EduTech Solutions." Maya and Victoria stood speechless. This was bigger than any competition prize. "Also," Sarah continued, "we'd like to discuss acquiring your app for national distribution. With some development, this could help millions of students." Before they could respond, the competition results were announced. They had won second place, not first, but high enough to secure significant funding for their project. As they celebrated that evening, Maya received a call from Westbrook High's principal. News of their success had spread, and the school wanted them to speak at an assembly about their journey. "Are you ready to tell our story to the whole school?" Maya asked Victoria. Victoria thought about how far she'd come from the girl who once ruled those halls. "Yes," she said. "Maybe it will help others understand that it's never too late to change." Back at their hotel, Victoria called her mother with the news. For the first time since her father's arrest, she heard real joy in her mother's voice. "I'm proud of you," her mother said. "Not because you won, but because of who you've become." Later that night, Victoria and Maya sat by the hotel window, looking out at the Washington Monument lit up against the dark sky. "You know what's funny?" Victoria said. "I spent years thinking I was better than everyone because of my family's money. Now that it's gone, I finally feel like I'm worth something." Maya smiled. "You always were. You just needed to lose everything to find yourself." As they planned their presentation for the school assembly, both girls knew that their story wasn't just about an app or a competition. It was about how sometimes the person you think is your enemy turns out to be the friend who helps you become your best self. The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and this time, they would face it together. The Westbrook High Auditorium was packed for the special assembly. Every student, teacher, and staff member had gathered to hear Maya and Victoria speak. Even local news reporters lined the back wall, cameras ready. Victoria stood backstage, smoothing her simple black dress, a far cry from the designer outfits she once wore. Maya stood beside her in a bright yellow dress, reviewing their notes one last time. "Ready to close this chapter?" Maya asked, squeezing Victoria's hand. Principal Martinez introduced them to thunderous applause. As they walked onto the stage, Victoria spotted Whitney and her old friends in the audience. They weren't sneering anymore. Instead, they looked curious, maybe even a little ashamed. "A year ago," Victoria began, her voice steady, "I stood in these halls thinking I owned them. I used my family's status to hurt others, especially one person who deserved none of it." She paused, looking at Maya. "I was wrong, and that's where our story really begins." Maya stepped forward. "When I first came to Westbrook High, I faced bullying and isolation, but sometimes life has surprising ways of teaching us lessons. Today, my former bully is my best friend and business partner." They took turns explaining their journey, from enemies to reluctant allies to genuine friends. They shared how their educational app had grown from a science fair project into a national program, soon to help thousands of students. "But the real success story isn't about an app," Victoria said. "It's about learning that true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. It's about understanding that our past actions don't have to define our future." During the question and answer session, a freshman raised her hand. "How do you forgive someone who bullied you?" she asked Maya. Maya thought carefully before answering. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to see the possibility of change in others, just as we hope they see it in us." After the assembly, something remarkable happened. Students who had been victims of bullying started approaching Victoria, not with anger, but with questions about how to move forward. Former bullies came to both girls, asking for advice on making amends. Principal Martinez announced the creation of a new peer mentoring program, with Maya and Victoria as its first leaders. Their app would be the cornerstone of the program, helping students connect and support each other. That afternoon, they visited their old bathroom, the place where their friendship had truly begun. The same fluorescent lights hummed overhead, but everything else felt different. "Remember when you found me crying in here?" Victoria asked, leaning against the sink. "Who would have thought that moment would lead to all this?" Maya replied. Victoria's phone buzzed. An email from Sarah Chen confirming their summer internships and the official launch date for their app's national rollout. Maya's phone chimed too. Acceptance letters from several top colleges, all offering full scholarships based on their work. As they walked out of school that day, they passed Victoria's old mansion. The C's sign was gone, replaced by a set old E sign, but Victoria didn't feel sad anymore. "You know what's weird?" she said. "I've never felt richer than I do now." Maya nodded understanding. "Because now you have something money can't buy, purpose." Their story spread beyond Westbrook High, featured in newspapers and educational journals. But more importantly, it sparked change in their school's culture. The rigid social hierarchy began to crumble, replaced by something more inclusive. That evening, they sat in Maya's modest living room, planning the peer mentoring program. Maya's mother brought them cookies, the same kind she'd shared with Victoria when she first visited their home, nervous and unsure. "One year," Victoria mused, biting into a cookie. "1 year ago, I was the mean rich girl, and you were my target. Now look at us." "Now look at us," Maya agreed. "Changed for the better, both of us." As the sun set outside, casting warm light through the windows, they continued working on their plans for the future. Their story wasn't just about a bully and her victim anymore. It had become something larger, a testament to the power of forgiveness, the possibility of change, and the truth that sometimes your greatest enemy can become your strongest ally. The mean rich girl and the bully black student had rewritten their own story, and in doing so, helped others believe they could rewrite theirs too.